Okay, well, let's get started with our Great Ideas Showcase. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. A little bit of background. Great Ideas Showcase is a venue for presenters to share new ideas, workflows, experiences, projects, or research via a poster. Now, because we're a virtual conference this year, obviously, we haven't been able to fully replicate the in-person poster experience where attendees can stop by and have a one-on-one chat with the poster presenters. But instead, the route we took was to make the posters available via SCAD. So they've been up since May the 12th for attendees to have a look at and review them. And today's session is an opportunity to ask any questions of the presenters about their work. And we'll go poster by poster. And for each poster, the presenter will give an overview, and then we'll open it up for questions about that poster from our attendees. So that's the layout of today's session. A couple of quick reminders. If you need closed captioning, please enable that on your Zoom. And if you can put chats in the Q&A, that would be great. But that is the outline for today. And we've got 4 posters to discuss. So without further ado, let's get moving. And our first poster is Catalogers Code, Growth and Discovery of Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. And Sarah, do you want to unshare your slides? So the presenters for Catalogers Code, Growth and Discovery of Scholarship of Teaching and Learning, if you'd like to share about your poster, tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, everybody. Wilhelmina is here with me as well to present. So this was just a project that we worked on with Scholarship of Teaching and Learning, which is a multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary post-secondary teaching and learning project that we have here at Georgia Southern. What we were doing with this is just kind of working on growing and the growth and the discovery of SoTL in terms of in our own catalog and using the Library of Congress subject headings. So we did use a feature in our current OPAC called Electronic Collections, where we built kind of essentially an electronic collection for this to increase the discovery of it in Georgia Southern's catalog. Mina, did you want to talk about any of the terms for SoTL and metadata?
It helps when I unmute. Just a moment. Yeah, so SoTL is Scholarship of Teaching and Learning, and this is essentially anything that's related to how you would teach. So published lesson plans is part of it in any topic. Sometimes lesson plans are published alongside journal articles in substantive journals. An example of that is the journal Chemical Engineering Education, which focuses heavily on those, or even Georgia Library Quarterly, which is our regional publication, had a lesson plan in the January issue as the peer-reviewed article. When trying to find things that are SoTL related, especially for a substantive field, so if a faculty member were trying to find lesson plans or something, there isn't really a great way to pull those all together. And this poster, the concept is about being able to tag things or have a controlled subject heading so that people would be able to search for them. And Georgia Southern University has a journal of scholarship in teaching and learning that is one of the premier journals. So we actually are able to be in touch with the wider community. Our collaborator on this and co-author Kevin Reagan is heavily involved in it, and he is now on the editorial board this year for the Journal of Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. So if we look up the correct subject heading, it may be something that actually happens, like to get those tagged nationally or get at least in like the 4 leading journals, because they're all in touch to get their articles tagged.
Thank you. I don't know if our attendees have any questions about the poster? Don't see anything in the chat in the Q&A. So I'll get started. So I think one of the questions I have is like, how did you work with, is it SoTL? Is that how you say the abbreviation? How did you work with SoTL practitioners kind of in this project? Did you build relationships with them, teachers and so on, to kind of better understand the metadata that you needed to create? And if so, how did you go about doing that?
Yeah, well, so Kevin is our main representation and for this particular project with SoTL. He's, like Mina said, he's heavily involved in it. And so this kind of was a collaboration with him and with our cataloging librarian, Rebecca Hunnicutt, another contributor on the project here. And we talked to Kevin Kevin came to us with the grand challenge number 5, which was how to make SoTL more discoverable. And then we talked to him about some of the ways that in our work as technical services librarians, how we can facilitate that for SoTL overall.
Okay. And so Kevin kind of approached you, so it wasn't kind of like an outreach from the library. You kind of already had that integration with it.
He's the librarian.
Yeah.
Yeah. We are librarians at Georgia Southern, our faculty. Alyshia and I are non-teaching, so we'll configure the research resources and discovery tool and things like that to facilitate research. Kevin is teaching librarian, so
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, so I was just sort of wondering how you work with practitioners and built partnerships. Okay.
Yeah, it was so I'll share the link. Georgia Southern has a Journal of Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. So
Okay.
International Journal of Scholarship of Teaching and Learning, which is housed here. And for several years, like more than 10 years, we have had an annual conference about SoTL. And so it's there's an active community campus wide, and that bridges all the different colleges. So someone who's trying to become better at teaching, they'll talk to people in other disciplines, because the practice of teaching is part of what helps students in a college class to learn, right? So being better at teaching is cross-disciplinary. Um, and the issue, or the sort of like thing that came up, is trying to find things that are about how to teach better or about scholarship of teaching and learning, but they're not published in a journal, specifically dedicated to that. So lesson plans published in journals all over in substantive fields. And it really is like when people have a problem, how to research that, how to make it findable. And it is one of the 5 SoTL grand challenges, which is things that the community as a whole, so even the wider community internationally, is working on. It really is a metadata problem. And what we did for the poster is look up what are the subject headings that already exist that might be applied to these, and to sort of like go through the concept of comprehensively applying a controlled subject heading. And it identifies on the poster FAST subject headings, so the faceted application of subject terminology. And then interestingly, Digital Commons has its kind of controlled like subjects you can apply to articles. It has one for scholarship of teaching and learning. So
Okay.
even promoting that, since that way, if a journal is using that software, they have sort of like a built-in where they're prompted to add that.
Okay. And so kind of moving forward, what are your plans? Was this kind of like a standalone project, or is something that you're integrating into your workflows?
So I guess actually, and Mina would definitely love for you to chime in on this one, because we're losing some of this electronic collection functionality with our new LSP. We're in the middle of a migration right now to a new LSP. I'll be interested to know, learn a little bit more about the way that we can address the electronic collection side of it all. But then as far as, the terms for SoTL and metadata, it's very much still a work in progress because there is no one defined Library of Congress subject heading for this. So and in discussion with some other SoTL practitioners, it has emerged that there are several terms that can apply. So it's almost like we need to all get on the same page with SoTL practitioners to move forward. And I think that's definitely going to be a big challenge.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any additional questions or anything else you would like us to know about? Well, first of all, presenters, is there anything else you'd like us to know about your poster? I don't see any questions either. So before we wrap it up, is there anything else you want us to know before we move on?
Yeah, I'll say I think for next steps. So Alyshia and I, our entire state, the Georgia, the university and community college library systems are doing system migration. Our go live date is July.
Oh.
So our next steps for doing things are mostly the ILS. I think our next steps for trying to do SoTL is to write things into a blog post for the wider SoTL community. And then to try to raise awareness with people who are involved in SoTL, but also on other journal editorial boards. So to have like a blog post that's a coalescing point of like, here's something the community can just pick this subject heading and apply it. And then to promote that or try to get journal editors to do it.
Okay. It sounds like a lot, and good
Yeah.
luck. The
Yeah,
ILS.
Yeah, we'll I think specifically what the blog post would be about would be how to tag SoTL publications in Digital Commons and then an open journal system, since those are the two dominant like open access publishing platforms that we connected with.
Okay. And there is a question or a thought in the chat that says, could proposing a specific Library of Congress subject heading be helpful?
So when I looked at that, and this is where I'm not a cataloger, first off, on the poster, we do have learning, study, and teaching, which is also Library of Congress subject heading. So that's a fast subject heading, which is a little bit easier for just regular people to use. You don't have a cataloging background. I think the issue with Library of Congress is that the subject headings are sort of nested, right? So if you have learning, study of teaching and learning, you might have like United States learning, study of teaching and learning, Russia study of teaching and learning, or something like that, where it's not one thing that a regular person could latch onto, and it's more like somebody who has the cataloger training. So as a controlled vocabulary, I very, very, very much respect that Library of Congress subject heading exists and control so many facets. But we were looking at, I guess, things that were a little bit more layman oriented, or even oriented towards people who aren't from libraries at all. So like a way to tag with a controlled vocabulary, but maybe not as structured and detailed as Library of Congress subject heading. Ooh, so we have in there, you could use LCGFT, which I am looking up right now.
Genre form terms. So, well, thank you for your presentation on your poster. We are kind of at the 10-minute mark, so we will move on to the next poster. But if there's time at the end, then we can open it up to questions for everybody. So thank you, Alyshia and Wilhelmina. And we'll move on to the next poster, Stuck in the Middle with You, usage statistics between system migrations, from Jackie.
Hi, give me 1 second. I'm going to share my poster so you guys have something to look at that is not me. Did that work?
Yes, there we go. We can see it now.
Excellent. Okay, awesome. So hi, everybody. I appreciate you coming here today to the Great Idea Showcase. My name is Jackie Blanton-Watkins. I am the Collection Analytics Librarian at Kennesaw State University, which is in the Western Metro Atlanta area. So I'm actually part of the University System of Georgia, much like my colleagues at Georgia Southern, who I think are before and after me today. So in the context of my poster, there are three really important things that happened at my library in the past couple years. I went back to managing our usage statistics, and in that, I also took usage harvesting management with me because it wasn't with me before, in the before time. And then we also went through a reorganization at my library, which was also our second in 5 years. So I think this time is going a little bit better. And then, we're also migrating from Ex Libris Alma to EBSCO Folio this summer with our go live date of July 16th. So not very long at all. And so with all that, I didn't really know what was going to happen to our usage in Alma. And we pull our usage manually anyway, because I know there are very strong opinions among the collective wisdom that harvesting isn't necessarily reliable of counter data. So, and there are also still vendors who don't provide harvesting capabilities or counter compliant reports. So that data ends up getting left out of Alma anyway. And so I have all of this, and we're also in this weird interim period. And so I wondered if there was anything useful or cool that I could do with it. And so after kind of, thinking on it for a while, I landed on Microsoft Power BI being the something useful or cool that I could use, especially once I figured out that I could use SharePoint as like a data connection to it, because that is where I store all of my usage reports. And so you can see here, my only image is my first dashboard, and which contains a very, very small amount of data, but I still think it's kind of cool. Also, I worked on it. And I mean, obviously in the future more cool will be to come. So I made a lot of mistakes getting to this. So many mistakes. So what I wanted to do was kind of hit the big three ones that really got me. So first, you can upload your files manually to Power BI, or you can connect, like I said earlier, SharePoint as a data source. So to connect SharePoint, you have to know what your site URL is, which I believe is like the base URL for your SharePoint. You can't enter the entire URL to the folder where the usage is saved. Trust me, I tried. But once you build that connection, that data connection, you can then navigate to the folder, and then it kind of lives as that's your kind of I guess, anchor to your folder. The file type is also important. So because you're using Power Query to kind of bring the data into Power BI. And if you've ever imported a file, like a CSV or a TSV or a text file into Excel, you have used Power Query to import and transform the data. So Excel files do not play well with Power Query. So I had to do a lot of manual cleanup in Excel before I could get those files into Power BI, because I couldn't manage it in Power Query. And it got to the point where I learned that there's so many little things you have to tweak first before you can do anything with Excel that it was just like, no, this Excel's not worth the effort. So now I've pivoted to downloading usage as data files, which I kind of I consider like, CSV files, so comma separated, TSV tab separated, text files, and then JSON. Which should be easier to process with Power Query. And if that is still a problem, or if there's too many different file types floating around, it still leaves the door open for me to use Python scripts as a way to handle that. And then finally, my last big thing was learning resources. So I found the trainings that Microsoft provides to be helpful, but ultimately very abstract. So the utility was limited for me at the beginning, where like all the things made sense, but I didn't understand how they all kind of fit together and why they mattered. I did discover that Microsoft contracts out training to a few companies, and they offer free all-day 8-hour workshops that are targeted to complete beginners. And I really think that was kind of what led me to kind of fully start understanding how all those things that I learned in the Microsoft trainings, like how they all connected and what they really matter. And that was how I was finally able to build this, was those things I learned in that workshop. So, and then I guess my next steps here, which I have at the bottom of my poster, is that, especially now that we're on counter 5.1, scraping all of that data and then the non-counter data that I have in all the file formats into a Power BI dashboard or dashboards. And then I want to add context to that usage, because the usage is relatively, I'm not say useless, but it doesn't mean a lot to anyone in like your administration or your leadership or university administration. So you want that context to kind of explain what's happening there. And then you using Python eventually to like, combine and manipulate, visualize, analyze, and identify trends within all of our acquisitions and collection development data that we have.
Thank you. I'm just checking the chat and the Q&A. I'll see if people have questions. But I do have one question. Well, my main question that I had noted down before, but you covered it, was how did you learn these tools? But you covered that well, because that's sort of like a big barrier, is like how do you have access to them and how do you learn them? But another question is, at this point in time, have your dashboards been used? I mean, are they being used for decision making, or are these kind of things that you're building out, and once you've got that context in them, as you talked about, they're going to become more useful and more impactful in decision making?
The idea is that they will be used for decision making. I'm not there yet. We're also, on top of all of our transitions with everything, we also have lost a few crucial like positions in my unit. So we've been spread very thin. So I haven't really gotten to work on these in the past like 4 to 5 months. But yeah, so like my dashboard that I have here it's only 2 years of data, and it's only like 3 publishers in it. So I wanted to, but I did create this so I could show my team, like, this is what I can make for you to help like our strategy librarian, our collection strategy librarian, be able to like at least like be able to quickly glance and see the high points and the low points and what we might need to investigate further. That's the idea.
Okay. And there's in the chat from Karen, we talked about adding context. Can you give an example of what that might be? What you mean by adding context?
So in this section I have over here called Add to the Mix, so it's stuff like I think ArtStore is a good example, I guess, for the context I was kind of thinking of. Like, so ArtStore went from non-counter, and then it became a counter 5, and then when it got merged into the JSTOR platform, I think last fall, end of last summer, it is now it got merged into the IRM1 release 5.1 report. So kind of, because anytime you change how usage for something is being counted, it's going to change the data, and kind of explaining, usage wasn't suddenly really bad for ArtStore, really, really good. They just changed how they counted it. And you have to take that into account when you're looking at it. Not that I think we would ever cancel ArtStore, but the kind of like the history of why the usage looks the way it does is kind of what the context I wanted to add. And obviously too, like, sometimes vendors have their own homegrown system, and then they, end up jumping onto a vendor platform like LibLinks or Scholarly IQ or Adapon or something like that. And again, like, are there any weird things with usage there that maybe I need to explain? Those are the 2 things kind of off the top of my head.
Okay. Thank you, Jackie. We're kind of at the 10 minutes, so I'll move on to our next presentation. But if there are more questions at the end, then we can, well, actually, there's one follow-up. What ideas do you have for integrating this kind of context? Is it something something that Karen has been trying to do in her institution as well? So how do you integrate that kind of context without it being kind of like long? Because we've also done it, with like spreadsheets, and you've got these long like notes on my spreadsheet. Do you have a better way of integrating that?
Not really, not at the moment. I guess my idea is, we're all really big about telling stories, right? And like how you communicate to your admin is like you tell them a story that they can kind of like understand and hinge and or kind of follow what you're going at. Because I'm really bad about, getting into the data and being like, obviously, it's fascinating and everything you need is right here in this massive spreadsheet. So my idea, I guess, is like using visualizations to kind of like hone in on a specific point or a specific trajectory or trend that's my idea. I don't know if it'll work. If you have ideas.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jackie. Thank you for sharing with us your poster. We are back to Alyshia to tell us about her poster, For Students by Students, a student-managed peer-to-peer social network in an online MLIS program.
Thank you. And thank you all for your patience as you get to listen to me talk again. James is here with me also presenting from Georgia Southern. We were in an our online MLIS program together. What happened in our program that I think happens in a lot is that there is this sense of isolationism that comes with being in an online graduate program, where the only place that you have to connect with your peers is in the virtual classroom. And that can lead to maybe feeling like your inauthentic self, and there can be some challenges involved with communication styles. Communicating academically or in a place where you're being judged academically can be a little bit different than how you would communicate with your peers in an outside the classroom setting that you would get in a traditional classroom. So we just wanted to look at the server and how it's grown, how it came to be, with some of the outcomes that we've seen come out of the server. It really did start a few years ago with just 20 people who had a frustrating experience in the program, and they wanted to continue to connect outside the discussion boards that were online. As our poster says, in April 2025, the server was over 450 people, and I checked right before logging on, and we were at 476. And I think the program has 600 to 700 students in it total. So we really have a good reach here. It is unaffiliated and unofficial. It's completely student ran, student led. There is space for alum in the server as well. So we do have different channels for professional development, a careers channel. There are channels for all of the individual classes so that you can talk about assignments, points of confusion, that kind of thing. And we're really interested to see how similar platforms could support online LIS communities more broadly instead of, obviously this one is very specifically about the online MLIS program, but we also feel like that this can be shifted to LIS communities just overall.
Yeah, to kind of go off of what Alyshia said, before becoming an academic librarian, I was a school librarian for about 3 years, and I was the only librarian in my building. And there's like Facebook groups and stuff like that, but like an actual like network where we could talk about like being a librarian and things that we can do in the field, like even on the network that was created for MLIS program, like there's talking about like research and like different ideas that they could look at to kind of further LIS research. So, being a librarian, you'd think that because you're so, there's so much like we have a big social battery, but it's kind of a lonely place. At least from my experience.
Thank you. I don't see any questions, so I will kick us off with a question. And again, it's kind of like a long-term one. How do you see this kind of evolving as students graduate or as new cohorts join? Do you have plans for long-term maintenance and sustainability? What if the moderators step away? How is it going to be sustained? Because 400 subscribers to be a lot. How are you going to sustain this?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's definitely a big challenge that we're experiencing. I've obviously graduated from the program, James has as well, and I'm still a moderator, but kind of a stepped back moderator of the server. So what we try to do is every time we have the moderator specific channel, and when we see a need for okay, these moderators have kind of fallen off a little bit, or they've graduated from the program, and so the disconnect is just a little bit deeper, we send out a call for new moderators, and we specify that we want the new mods to be current students, and preferably ones that are comfortable with sharing resources and talking about information, specifically that's applicable to the Discord. So it's a continuous sharing kind of thing. I don't think our model is perfect, and I don't think it's necessarily sustainable, but we are continuing to meet the challenges that get thrown at us. There's not much of a precedent for this for us to follow, so it feels like a lot of the challenges that we face are just the mods and the server community overall just getting together and workshopping the problem.
So there's a couple of questions in the chat. How are new students made aware of the services, and does the School of Library and Information Science support this in any way? I know you said it was unaffiliated, but do they provide, do they support and advertise it in any way?
So new students are made aware of services word of mouth, really. We encourage users to share a link to the server in their introduction post, which each professor requires at the beginning of each term, just a casual introduction post. So we encourage sharing the link that way so that somebody can see it by viewing the introduction post. To tie in the second part of that question is the school is aware of the Discord, and they are supportive. They do understand that it is for students by students, so there are no faculty involved in it at all, but there is an online orientation video that the school has officially posted, and we do have a section in that video where we talk about the Discord a little bit. So anybody that views that video learns about it that way. And then our system for contacting those people is that we have a Gmail account set up. The new user or the potential user would email the Gmail account from their school affiliated email account, which is how we verify that they are an actual student. And then we send them a link to that email address.
So how did you all decide on Discord as a platform? Was it just something that you had access to, or are you a sort of paid version of Discord? How did you decide on the platform?
I don't want to talk too much, James, so if you want to chime in at all, please feel free. But really, it started out in like our second term of the course. Students were using Slack, but the problem with Slack is that after a certain amount of time for the free version, conversations and the workspaces get deleted. So every student in the class was in this particular Slack where we were experiencing frustrations, and then we saw a need for a more long-term solution, a bigger place to connect. And another student pitched Discord as the idea. I, at this point, had never heard of Discord, didn't know what it was, and we kind of just jumped in feet first with figuring out how to set it up, how to maintain it. And it's actually worked really, really well for our purposes with the creation of channels, all the different features that Discord offers. I really can't think of a better platform that I've seen that would fill the need the way that Discord has because of the features that it offers.
And like I think I might have mentioned earlier, like a lot of the social networks that I've seen out there where there's like large library groups is like mostly Facebook, and we wanted something more than just Facebook, something where I mean, there's more opportunity to, I don't know, Facebook, it just seemed kind of antiquated for the needs that we really wanted to kind of implement.
And there is a question in the chat that says, is there a separate group for undergraduate students? I don't know.
We do not have a separate group for undergraduate students because this was just the MLIS program. So it is just our graduate students that are in the group. But I do think this is an idea that could be implemented at any, for undergraduates in a specific program or overall. Again, it just, somebody has to do the legwork of building the server essentially.
And then we've got one more question in the chat, and then we'll move on to our last poster. Do you have any succession plans in place if Discord continues its slide into requiring pay or ads for different features?
We don't at this time. It has been some of the more Discord familiar users that we have in the moderator group have brought this up some, so we're aware of it, but we don't have any solid plans right now. Yeah, if anybody has, again, there's not much precedent. We kind of meet each challenge as it comes. So I hope that we don't get to that point, but if we do, I really do have a lot of confidence in our moderator group and just the Discord users overall to come to a solution. Having 476 people work together with the same goal in mind of connecting with one another and staying connected has been so powerful and so impactful. I just can't speak on it enough. So I really think that we could come to a solution if it came to that.
Fantastic. Thank you both, James and Alyshia, for this great poster presentation. So we are on to our fourth poster, Sarah, with Data in Action using Wikidata with catalog data for collection diversity analysis.
Hello, I'm Sarah Holsapple. I'm the collection analysis librarian at Duke University Libraries. Let me share my screen real quick. So here is my poster. We have a collection goal to build a diverse collection. Scholarly research requires engaging with works from different points of view. And we have these broad questions, like does our coverage of this subject area contain all of these perspectives, and really specific questions like what works of philosophy do we have in our collection by women from Arab countries. These answers are really elusive. The catalog records and the LC authority records don't contain any information about the standpoint or the perspective of the author or of the work. So I look to link data to fill this gap. I met with our cataloging team and they suggested looking at Wikidata. They have over 12,000 properties that describe over 15 million entities. So we started with this specific question to create a list of female philosophers from Arab countries. So the first step was to query Wikidata. I wrote a Sparkle query into the Wikidata query service with the properties sex or gender, country of citizenship, occupation, and then Library of Congress Authority ID. And I can show you the link. This is the actual query in the query service. My tabs up here. Hold on. And this is the return. So step 2 is to take these names that we get from Wikidata and match them to our catalog. And this is where we sort of ran into some trouble, but I get into that in a moment. We can go back to the catalog. So there are some links here. If you get the actual spread poster link, you can see the query and you can see that spreadsheet. So some of the limitations that we know are that Wikidata is not comprehensive. It's got 115 million entities, but that's not all of them, especially when it comes to, I guess, these diverse resources that we're looking for. So the list requires some level of human curation. I also, in addition to this list, did extra research and found more philosophers to add to the list, but I didn't include them in here. And the other problem is this name matching problem. So we use Alma Analytics and the author name comes from the mark 100 or 110 or 111 field. And it's a personal name. It's formatted in that inverted order. So it's the surname first, and then the forename or the family name. But Wikidata doesn't do that. Wikidata just has a forename and surname. I was hoping to match with that Library of Congress Authority ID. There it is. But they don't all have them. So that's impossible to match it that way. Because this was a small data set, I just ended up matching them all by the each, but that's not going to work for larger groups of things. So I am seeking advice, and I have this form link here. So feel free to click on the link and share any of your thoughts. The remaining questions are, what is a way to match the names between Wikidata and the catalog? I think I also would like to reverse this process to get to put in a list of names from our catalog and return the Wikidata information. If anyone is aware of any other properties that might be helpful, or tools that might be better for this work specifically. Yeah, so if there are any questions.
Do folks have any questions or any input on Sarah's seeking advice section? I don't see any, so I'm just going to start with a question, because one of the things that I've often comes up when we're sort of trying to work with diverse collections is, did you create a definition of diversity for this project? Did you define what diversity meant in this context?
For this specific project, I wasn't looking for diversity. I was looking for the specific list of like women, females that were philosophers that were from Arab countries. So not for this project. For other projects where we do sort of start with a definition of what diversity is in that section. So it might be of authorship or subject matter. If it's something with characters, and look at the character representation.
Okay. So you've just taken a small, because I've got these big questions here, like, have you identified any gaps in your current collection as a result of your analysis? But you've really just done a very small analysis, and this is more like a proof of concept, right?
Yes. I'm sure that our collection has gaps. I think that would be if we could take like a list of authors from a specific call number range, and sort of plug the author names into Wikidata into a Sparkle query or something, and then return these properties about the authors. I think that would be a way that we would identify the gaps.
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot of information that's still not in Wikidata. I mean, we don't have, I guess you could get things like university that somebody attended to sort of get to some of these things, but I mean, race is something that's not available there, or I don't know, disability status, things like that. LGBTQ plus status is going to be hard to find in something like Wikidata.
Mm-hmm. And have you, I guess, is there any other sort of issues with Wikidata, data consistency or completeness? I mean, the ones you mentioned clearly, but is there any other sort of challenges?
I think just that not all the fields exist for all of the entities that are in there. So, it could be that there are other female philosophers in there that don't have an occupation field filled out, so we would miss that. So I think it's just a sort of incompleteness and inconsistency. Wikidata is like Wikipedia. It's just people entering things in there. So for the most part, it seems like it's correct and well sourced, but it won't always be.
Yeah. Are there any other questions for Sarah, or any input on the work that she's doing, or anybody doing anything similar that they want to share?
And I'll leave this form open, so if you would like to share any advice or any thoughts on that, the forms.office.com link, please do. I welcome all the input on this.
And there's a response in the chat to talk to Darnell Melvin, who does, he's a colleague of mine at UNLV, and I can attest to the fact that he is very knowledgeable and sort of a leading name in the use of Wikidata and names. So
Okay.
I can always put you in touch with Darnell if you want to reach out to him.
Yeah, I will. I'm going to stop sharing, but yeah, okay. I'll reach out to him. That sounds great.
Okay. Well, we are at the end of our session, 1:30, it was 1:30 my time, half past the hour, someplace else, wherever everybody else is. So thank you so much to our presenters for these 4 fascinating posters, all very different, but really, really interesting and exciting projects that people are working on. So thank you for presenting. Thank you, everybody, for attending. This is the end of the day on Zoom of 3. Oh, I think, was there a raised hand? I thought I saw a raised hand. Nope.
Yeah, and I have audio, which I think participants don't. I wanted to, can you put that link to the forms in chat? And I think it's because it formatted kind of funny in the uploaded PDF of the poster. Like it's a broken link and I'll have to play with it to, yay, thank you.
So anyway, this is the end of the day on Zoom Room 3. Move on over to Zoom Room 1 at 45 minutes past the hour for the awards presentation. But until then, thank you. Thank you everybody for joining this session.